Hello, welcome to the Pretty Intense podcast. Please hit subscribe. I deeply appreciate all the times that it's clicked. The subscribers means that we're on the right path, and it also helps us get bigger guests and be able to just do a better job for you. So please hit subscribe if you would. Today on the show is Sal Di Stefano. He is a trainer, has been a trainer for a couple of decades, knows so much about really psychology, human nature, the body. He has a show that I've been listening to forever, Mind Pump TV. So it's him and a few guys that sort of hash it out about various different topics that are going on, and then always getting into some element of fitness. And then they have callers on where they ask their specific questions pertaining to them, which is always so interesting. So I've just been learning so much from them. It's actually the strength program that I'm doing right now is through Mind Pump. And it's a program called MAPS. Go to their website and pick one of, I don't know, there must be 20 different programs. I'm always trying to find the truth out. Like what is it that I need to be doing that could be sort of better here or there? And I tell you what, I've learned so much about gaining muscle, strength training, what kind of workout programs are good for you, which one's bad, and what kind of signal it's sending the body essentially, and what mechanism is activated in the body that leads to essentially feeling better, being healthier, leaning out, being stronger, and having a better hormonal profile. Really powerful stuff. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please let me know what you think in the comments. Today's Pretty Intense partner is Athletic Greens. I take AG1 by Athletic Greens literally every day. Covering my nutritional basis for the day couldn't be any easier, which is why I trust Athletic Greens. Just a mix of 1 scoop of AG1 with water first thing in the morning, done. I also like that it costs less than $3 a day. Pretty good if you ask me. It's a really effective daily habit with the highest quality sourced ingredients. Win-win. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Go to athleticgreens.com/prettyintense. That's athleticgreens.com/prettyintense. Check it out. So what is something that gets you sick? You have kids, right? So it could be kids, right? They're a cesspool of germs. The amount of hours I've spent listening to your show, I know a lot about you and the boys. Mental health is spent in the gym for the most part. So it's like, how often do you run yourself into the ground and go, shit, went a little far with that. Probably should have taken more rest days.
Yeah, that's always a struggle. I think what people who are fitness fanatics, I've talked about this before on the show. By the way, thanks for listening to that's so cool that you listen to our show.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, we've all been a fan of yours for a long time, which is to hear that. So it's kind of cool.
Thanks.
I think when you really enjoy fitness and you do it for years and years and years, you're always playing that dance of the right amount, and then you kind of tend to go towards maybe a little too much. And that's something that you always kind of need to check and regulate, because what is too much changes depending on the context of what's going on in your life, sleep, stress, diet. Obviously as you age, things start to change. So it's like a constant, continual journey of figuring out what the right amount is, paying attention to those signs. And that can be a struggle sometimes, especially for me, because I love it. I love the process of working out. And so I tend to push a little too hard often. And I know what the signs are, and sometimes I'll ignore them a little bit to try and hit that new PR or whatever. But I'm not as bad as I used to be, that's for sure. It used to be I would wait until my body was screaming before I would back off. Now it's like, oh, okay, my joints bother me a little bit, or I'm a little too sore, and then I'll back off. But yeah, that's always that game. It's like, what's the right amount versus too much?
Yeah, I'm curious. I want to kind of go top down, bottom up, and just like what that looks like for someone, because everyone's going to fall in the middle. There's kind of like a max, like, even with all the modalities possible, like here's what is within reason, and here's like the minimum if you want gains. But let's start there. Like, I mean, if somebody is in their, if somebody's fit, somebody has options, they cold plunge, which I know you don't want to cold plunge if you want to gain muscle, because it stops what's the mechanism with cold plunge?
No, that's good. Not necessarily. So cold plunging will reduce the inflammatory signaling process, which is a part of the process that tells the body to build muscle. Right. there is a plus side to that as well, right? Because look, you at one point you were competing at a very high level, and being able to increase your body's ability to handle more stress meant you could train and practice more, right? So is there a benefit to practicing exercises more frequently? And the answer to that is absolutely, especially for people who are learning new skills or perfecting new techniques. So if you could reduce the inflammatory signaling and then add more to compensate, so you're at the same as you were before in terms of the signal, except you're able to practice more. So it's not as black and white as don't do that, it won't build muscle. It's more like, hey, if I do that, I can probably squat a few times more a week, or I could probably practice that lift that I'm trying to learn
I see.
more that week. So it's not so cut and dry.
So the damage to the muscle, you kind of have a certain amount of muscle building that happens in response to that inflammation to go and repair. And then if you cold plunge, you actually, you're still missing a little bit of that repair time, but the fact that you can do it all again actually is worth, 30% more or something like that. You're not getting the maximum out of that one lift, but it still is worth something a little bit more to be able to go and add volume again.
100%. So think of an athlete who's trying to perform at a high level to practice their skills very often. Okay. So if you're a pitcher, the more you can pitch, the better you'll be at pitching. So it's not just I'm strengthening my arm and able to throw the ball real hard. I got to continue because it's a technique, right? It's a skill. So if I could do something that allows me to practice more, that's better. So that's true also with just exercise. A lot of people don't look at exercise like a skill, but running is a skill, lifting is a skill, rowing is a skill, swimming is a skill. And for the average person listening, they're like, well, what's the difference if I'm just working out and getting sore and sweating? The better you can perform a particular movement, the better you have mastered the skill, I should say, of a particular movement, the more benefit you'll reap from it. So if you can run with better technique and skill, then you're going to get much more out of running than you would with, let's say, worse skill or technique. So, okay, I'm going to cold plunge or do these other things that maybe reduce the muscle building signal by it's a small percentage, but it's like 3% or 4%. It's nothing.
Oh, that's it? Oh my God, I'm gonna lift every day. Your program? Why is it only 3 days a week full body? It should be 6.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, people get caught up in this kind of stuff. It's pretty funny to me. It's not 9 out of 10 times it's not so cut and dry. You really have to look at the individual and consider the whole picture. And these studies that they tend to perform on stuff like this are like 8, 12 weeks. Well, I mean, 8 to 12 weeks can tell you something, but it doesn't tell you everything, especially if this is what you'll be doing for the rest of your life. You got to look at that in context.
So what is a reasonable volume? I know your programs, I've looked through them. I bought 2. I'm doing aesthetic, but I think I bought anabolic first. It's like 6 days a week of lifting. Yeah,
aesthetic would be about 6 days.
Aesthetic is 3 full body days within a few focus sessions.
Yes.
Yeah. I did my tricep focus session. I know. I'm sure you invented the focus and the trigger sessions because you're like, what am I supposed to do with all these other days?
Well, really, what they are is there's a few different mechanisms that signal the body to adapt. There's a few things to focus on. One of them is intensity. Another one is just simple volume. There's metabolic stress. And so what you can do, and the thing that you always have to consider, I think the thing that might get in the way is your body's ability to adapt, heal, and recover. So we have to look at, okay, what can we do? And when does the recovery start to become a problem? Well, training intensely, you'll hit that wall pretty quickly. But can I do movement in a less intense way that doesn't necessarily compromise recovery? In fact, many times improves or enhances recovery, and still don't think of it as sending the muscle building signal, but rather maintaining the muscle building signal. So when you look at the data on, like, if you were to do a workout today, they could test something called muscle protein synthesis, and we see it spike relatively quickly after a workout. And then it starts to drop after about 48 hours or so. It starts to go down to baseline. But we can't just hammer the body every single day. So is there a way to kind of keep that signal above baseline without compromising recovery too much? And yes, that's lower intensity type workouts. So like a trigger session would be that, or even a focus session would be something like that. So it's like these lower intensity workouts where I'm doing exercises that don't necessarily cause as much damage, like single joint exercises, machines, where I'm focusing more on, let's say, the pump or the connection versus those days where I'm really kind of getting after it.
I don't know. Sissy squats feel pretty damn hard to me. Okay, they're not for sissies. I was downstairs trying to teach my mom sissy squats, and
They're hard
because she's hiking the Grand Canyon in a few months, and so she needs to build her legs up and strength a little bit. And I'm like, all right, mom, these are nuts for sissies, but here they are. Yes, there's plenty of ways to make it difficult, but so what's the most volume program that you have? Because I'm guessing that would be your maximum volume recommendation.
Oh, we have a program called PED that is a double split routine. So you're working out twice a day. You're training each body part 2 or 3 days a week. It's a super high volume, extremely advanced routine that I would say is probably for about 1% of our audience. So it's like the super genetically gifted athlete, where there are people out there that just a lot of people don't get this either. This is actually quite important, even especially to communicate to women, because sometimes women are afraid, not so much today, as much today, I should say, but still you see this where they're just afraid of strength training because they think they're going to just build these huge muscles.
Until you start trying, and then you realize how hard it is, and then you can put you can put tons. I put lots of effort into it, and I'm like, okay,
and you just look sculpted. There's this genetic variance when it comes to muscle building, where on one end you have muscular issues, actual genetic deficiencies, and then on the other end you have these genetic anomalies where they just, without even working out, they are stronger and more muscular than most people. And they're about as rare as a 7-foot tall person. So if you think about how many times you've run into someone who's 7 foot tall in the real world, which is never, that's how rare, but they exist. They're very few and far between. You go on social media, it looks like everybody's that person, but in real life, it's like super, super rare. In my career of managing gyms for, I don't know, 2.5 decades or so, I can honestly say I've probably known maybe 2 people who kind of fit that bill. I remember I used to have this guy that worked for me. He was a porter. So he cleaned the bathrooms and stuff. And I used to watch him. He'd work out every once in a while in the gym, and I'd see him do skull crushers. So that's like a tricep extension exercise with 225 pounds, which is just insane. And he was just so muscular. And I thought, man, this guy must be just dialed in.
Making it out.
No, he was eating Pop-Tarts and McDonald's, and he was just he was one of those people that he just got those genes that just his body.
Problem is with those people, they don't need to work out because they look good always. So then they just kind of like, that's just their build. Can you imagine if they put a little effort in?
Well, if they do, then you got yourself a professional athlete. Exactly. I know you've definitely run into professional athletes. You ever watch a lineman, a 280 or 300 pound lineman run? It's terrifying. You see a huge human being run full speed faster than anybody you've ever seen. It's like, this doesn't make any sense. It's like looking at a rhinoceros. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But those people exist. But most of us are somewhere in the middle.
Yep.
Meaning you could dedicate your entire life to trying to build muscle, and what you'll end up with is a very sculpted, healthy physique is what you'll end up.
So that being the maximum, and for those rare people, is what you recommend as far as a split goes for someone who really enjoys the gym, that's outside of that 1% or less of people that have genetic gifts. Is 3 full body days truly the right amount because you're hitting everything 3 times if you're willing to spend the time in the gym? Or is it better is there another option that would kind of continue with that muscle synthesis, protein synthesis that happens within that sort of 24 to 72 hour window. I think you said after every workout is where your body's repairing and building muscle, but after that it loses the signal.
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot of things we have to consider when you ask a question like that, because I trained people for years and years and years. So the number one thing that I consider is what will the person be able to do consistently for the rest of their life. That's the most important thing to consider. So if somebody asks me, what's the best type of cardio? The one that you'll do is first. Okay. So that being said, most people, not fitness fanatics, because remember, fitness fanatics, we love exercising. We love working out. We love the whole thing.
Yeah.
The average person would exercise and work out to improve the quality of their life. So really they're using it as a tool to have a better life, move better, be a better spouse, a better parent, just feel healthy. Not because they love it so much for the sake of it, but rather they love what it does to the rest of life. The average person, in terms of structured workouts, because there's activity and then there's structured workouts. The average person, we could probably say, if we do a good job, we can get them to do about 2 days a week consistently. Okay. 3 days a week is excellent. But most people on average, if you really average it out with missed workouts and stuff, are probably going to do about 2 days a week. So you're looking at about 2 full body workouts. Full body because it allows you to practice these core exercises and movements to maximize the skill. It allows you to do the movements that really give you the most bang for your buck. You're only in there twice a week. Again, there's activity as well. So I would encourage that person to find ways to inject activity into their daily lives. So like one example would be, my favorite would be a 10-minute walk after breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I've had a lot of success with, getting people to be able to do that. It seems to be real easy for people to maintain. It turns out, it turns into about 30 minutes if you add it all up. It helps with blood sugar. It's, just when you look at the data on it, makes a big difference. So about 2 days a week, 3 days a week would be amazing for most people. All right, volume wise, what does that look like? The average person, if they did, 3 sets of an exercise per body part twice a week, they would get pretty far. They would feel good. They would gain some strength. They would have the mobility. They would feel good. They would reap a lot of the benefits of strength training. Okay. Now, if somebody's like, wow, I really like this. Like, I really want to be able to do more. I'm enjoying this. Well, then you can add a third day. Now you're doing about 9 sets. On the upper end, you're looking at about 16 to 18 total sets per week. But now we're getting again into that kind of fitness fanatic level. But Danica, I'm telling you, I trained people for a long time, professionals and stay-at-home moms and dads. And I got people really far, which is 2 days a week, like really far, like feeling good, really good strength. I would get guys to be able to deadlift twice their body weight. I'd be able to get them to be able to squat their body weight with just a couple days a week. The beauty of strength training is I like to look at strength training like investing. If you want to, let's say, become wealthy, there's a couple ways you could do that. One is to work more hours, where you just, I make X amount of dollars per hour. I'm going to work more and more and more hours. The other way is to take your money and put it somewhere so that wherever you put it, that investment starts to make money for you. Strength training is more like that. Okay. It's sending the signal, then your body does the work for you after that signal sent. Again,
burns the calories, maintains, because once you put the muscle on, it also doesn't take that much to keep it. I was like shocked to hear you talk about the amount of effort it takes, the amount of reps and sets that it takes to maintain muscle once you've generated it. It's something like a tenth or something, right? It's like significantly less. So it's a total investment.
It's crazy. You might have even experienced this where you'll take a week or 2 off, you go back to the gym and you're as strong or stronger.
Oh yeah. Well, I take a week or 2 off, I lean out, and then I go back at least just as strong.
Yeah, it's wild. So, and there's a few things we could talk about with that. I mean, there's muscle memory, which is a really well documented phenomena. If you've ever broken a limb and had to wear a cast, you've experienced this where you take the cast off and your leg or your arm is like totally atrophied, and then in a very short period of time, the muscle seems to come back by itself. It's just like evolutionary adaptive process that we've evolved with. To
You
where
boys are the ones that break your limbs. Us girls, we just get our egos hurt.
yeah, right.
Our hearts.
You've never broken a limb?
No,
Really?
I would
Wow,
no.
wow, that's awesome.
Yeah,
But I think some people can relate.
totally.
It's a really
Yeah,
interesting phenomenon.
yeah. It's
So
crazy.
once you gain, let's say you work out for a full year and you do a really good job and you gain, let's say, 10 pounds of lean body mass. So you just
Amazing.
sculpted, more tight, faster metabolism. Then for whatever reason, you stop working out for a couple months. Maybe you get sick, who knows? You lose all of it. Then you get back to the gym. You'll gain it back in a month. What it took you a year to gain, when you lose it, it'll take you a month to gain it back. And then to keep it, the amount of training to keep it is very little. And what you'll find, which is this is really cool. I remember one of the big questions I would get from members when I would tour people around my gyms and stuff is they'd say, "Well, what happens after I get in shape?" And I stop working out. I'm like, "Well, you get out of shape." So people are always looking for that, like, can I do this and then get those permanent results? Well, that doesn't exist. But boy, does this get kind of weirdly close. Like, you could train yourself for years and then maintain it with very little
Yeah.
work and effort. And this is well documented. There's lots of ways to support this. It just doesn't take as much to maintain. Now, this isn't true for every physical attribute like stamina. Stamina you lose very quickly. Like if you're trying to build lots of endurance and stamina and then you take a week or two off, you'll come back and you'll notice a considerable reduction.
Right.
Strength takes a while actually to go away. Muscle you don't lose it nearly as quickly. And the longer you have it, I like to tell this story. If you probably heard me tell this since you listen to the show. I remember I used to have this wellness studio, and it used to be next door to this like breakfast joint that was really popular. So people would line up for the breakfast joint, and I'd see them outside my door while I was training clients. Well, anyway, there was this like 5'7" like older guy, and he kept looking in the window, and then he walked in. I was training a client. He had a Russian accent, and he goes, "Can I try this?" It was a kettlebell. It was like a 70-pound kettlebell. I said, "Yeah, you can." I mean, yeah, sure, you could see what it looks like or whatever. And he grabbed it and he like pressed it up in the air, brought it down. And I want to say he was in his 70s. And he had these like little muscular like forearms. I mean, he was a little overweight.
Popeye.
But you could, I mean, I know I could look at somebody and be like, this guy has a past or history.
Yeah, he was like a lumberjack or something. Like this guy did something seriously manual.
He was an Olympic weightlifter for the Soviet Union. And he was telling me, and I'm like, "Do you exercise now? Do you work out now?" He goes, "Oh, no, not really. I don't really do it as much." But I remember looking at this guy's forearms and his body, and it's like there's this almost this permanence because he trained for years and years and years at such a high level. There's something called muscle fiber hyperplasia that now we've observed, and it's where it's like you increase the amount of muscle fibers you have after years of training.
That's all the more reason to lift weights. And I was at the CrossFit Games last past weekend, and the guys kind of look like they could look in real life if they worked out. But the girls don't look anything like they would look like if they were in real life working out. And I was like, maybe that's just because girls don't lift.
Yeah.
Like most girls just don't lift. So that's not even close to the normal amount of workouts or the kind that they would ever do. But such an incredible investment. And I just love the fact that I can eat way more. Like, amen.
You hit the nail on the head. It's faster metabolism. What a great buffer against the modern life. Modern life is like we're surrounded by all this food and inactivity. Your daily life is inactive, just the way that we've designed the world now. So a faster metabolism is like a wonderful insurance policy. That wasn't great thousands of years ago. I think people need to understand that. 50,000 years ago, having a fast metabolism is not a great idea.
Yeah, true. That's totally true.
You're not going to find food everywhere. But now a fast metabolism is a great thing to have because there's food everywhere. You want to be able to burn it off. In fact, when we talk about the things that are quote unquote unhealthy, like sugar and certain types of fats, when you eat in what's called a calorie deficit, in other words, you eat less than your body's burning, like at least 90% of the negatives that are associated with those things are erased from the fact that you burn it off. So a faster metabolism is this amazing insurance policy. And you mentioned women and girls don't lift weights. It's because they've been marketed to so heavily that like being small is good. That
Mm-hmm.
losing weight on the scale is good. If you
Yeah.
build 10 pounds of muscle and lose 10 pounds of body fat, you've lost no weight, but you're
Right.
smaller.
Oh my God. I mean, I love that story that you tell. Heard you tell it a couple of times where women will come in to train and they have a number that they want to hit. And you're like, I'll train you for free or something like that. If you can guess how much this woman weighs. And she comes over and they all guess way too high because she's just freaking a brick house. And they're shocked. Like she's tiny and she weighed like 135 and everybody thought she was like
They thought
105 pounds or something.
Yes. Yeah, they all thought she was like 100 pounds, but she's actually 135 pounds. Yeah,
I mean, that's just amazing.
muscle is dense. Like, again, if you gain 10 pounds of muscle, lost 10 pounds of body fat, you would lose about a quarter of the size. So it takes up roughly, 3/4 of the space. So muscle's dense. Plus muscle gives you shape. So
Totally.
you can have rounder glutes,
Yeah.
posture, more sculpted arms, and then the
Yeah, the
body fat
shape
that you
totally
lost.
conveys leanness too. It's
It
like
does.
I said a long time ago, like you can change the size of your body if you want to go run, but you're not going to, the only way you're going to change the shape of your body is with weights.
It's the most targeted form of exercise where
Hmm.
you can get as close as possible to sculpting yourself, where you can look in the mirror and say, I want more, shape here, and I want more
Yeah.
roundness here, and I want more tightness here. So there's targeted specific exercises that'll allow you to do that. And then here's the biggest one is hormones. Hormone balance is a big deal. Hormones, they tell us how to feel. They help direct fat storage or muscle gain. They influence cognitive function. If you're telling your body to build muscle and you're feeding yourself appropriately to do so, one of the first things your body does is it organizes its hormones in a way to be able to do so. What is that
I
hormone?
didn't think about that cascade effect that the hormones are now being informed.
They are, and if you think about, and this is true, what is the best hormone profile, or what does a muscle building hormone profile look like in both men and women?
Mm.
It's the kind of hormone profile you had when you were like 18 years old.
Right, right.
Higher growth hormone, it's more appropriate cortisol, it's a balance between estrogen and progesterone, it's adequate levels of testosterone, also important in women, uh,
Thyroid function.
thyroid function. So women are, and this is especially important. Well, it's important for both men and women. You're seeing this is actually affecting men quite a bit now, but women will talk about this quite a bit because women experience hormone fluctuations, and then of course menopause is a big shift.
Hmm.
You're telling your body to build muscle, you will blunt a lot of those. Like muscle is one of the best ways to do that. Like, talk about some of the things that affect women: endometriosis, PCOS. Um, it's all of that is directly connected to insulin resistance. I mean,
Hmm.
you want to improve your insulin sensitivity, build some muscle. There's nothing that'll do it better because muscle is a storage vessel for sugar,
Hmm.
right? Glycogen, which comes from sugar. It's also one of the most insulin sensitive tissues on the body. In fact, they have studies on obese individuals where they don't have them lose any weight. They just build a little bit of muscle, and you see these significant improvements in blood sugar levels. Like no other form of exercise does this as directly as just telling your body to build a little bit of muscle. It's just not marketed to women like it should be.
So with blood sugar and insulin and this whole loop, I mean, I spent a hot second like wearing a CGM to check my blood sugar, checking if I went into ketosis using fasting and it trying to not have any increase in my blood sugar. Like that being the goal, which then you quickly realize fat is pretty much the answer.
Yeah.
Fat and walking after you eat are
Yes.
pretty much the answer to that problem. But then, through my interviews and people and curiosities, and then I'm spending a hot second chatting with Paul Saladino about all of this. And he's like, you shouldn't worry about your blood sugar spiking. It's normal. You eat something, it goes up, it's got to come down though. So is it actually healthy to have a blood sugar increase and decrease, or is it more of like sometimes it's okay, but that is actually what creates the insulin resistance, is the system of producing the insulin to bring the blood sugar down just gets worn out?
Yeah, well, both. There's a lot of context that we have to consider there. Spikes within a certain range are normal. Drops within a certain range are good. You don't want to get these extreme fluctuations, even if you're otherwise healthy, because it does influence behaviors. This is important to consider. If you get really high spikes and drops, you're probably going to feel irritable. You're going to get cravings. You're going to feel brain fog. And that all tends to drive behaviors that aren't so healthy. So it's like, okay, I want to eat more,
Sure.
have more cravings, or I want to eat more food, or I feel irritable or not as energetic, so I'm not going to exercise as much. So that's why that's so important. But you know what you said about like walking after a meal, what you're doing is you're eating the sugar from the meal gets put into the blood. The walking or movement, it's, imagine the muscles are like sponges. Okay, so this is a kind of a good analogy. It's way more complex than this, but the muscles are contracting and relaxing, and it's literally your muscles, like sponges, are sucking it up. They're sucking up that blood sugar. But if you eat and sit there and don't move, it's almost like it has nowhere to go. I heard this interesting quote from Peter Attia. He's a brilliant he said the difference between you and a person who has blood sugar issues that are so bad that they lose like fingers, okay, so like diabetes, right, where you can lose limbs. The difference between a healthy person and that person is a teaspoon of sugar in the blood.
So is it just how your body deals with it is essentially what the truth of it is? It's not the amount of sugar necessarily. It's
Where does it go? Right? Are your muscles able to suck it up? Is your liver able to process it?
right.
Or is it just sitting there floating around in your blood? And then insulin resistance is because insulin drives the sugar to the tissues of your body. But if you don't have big storage capacity, you don't have very much muscle, you're not moving much, it kind of sits around in the blood. You need more insulin to do that, and over time, your body becomes resistant because it stops reacting.
I'm curious. I was going to ask about this a little later on when I ask about some diet stuff, but we might as well just continue with what makes sense at the moment. So then enter in metformin, Ozempic, Wegovy, and they increase insulin, correct? At least I understand that Ozempic does.
Yeah, they work by increasing insulin sensitivity. So here's what I'll say about some of these things. First off, metformin's been around for a long time. It's actually one of the oldest medications. So we know what it does and what it doesn't do. There are some potential negatives, but there are some positives. Semaglutide and these other what are known as GLP-1 agonists, very interesting peptides. They seem to be the most effective. I guess you put them in, I don't know, medical interventions for weight loss and for fat loss. If you combine it with other changes in your lifestyle, but I will say this: they're not substitutes for just exercise and eating right. And there's another part to this too. First off, they're not miracle drugs. They're not miracle
They
pills.
sure look like it on people.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. You've been working out for a long time. If you were to list the top 5 reasons why you still work out, looking, fit is probably, it might not make the top 5. It's probably more like mental health and
Feeling good. Yeah. Function, feeling good, mental clarity, good for energy, function. It'd probably make it in the top 5 for looks.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people, we don't do this very well in the fitness space. We don't communicate this very well. And this is where it gets a little, I don't know, esoteric, but look, you competed at extremely high level in your career. If you went back in time and there was a magic wand and I could just, tap you on the head and boom, you're this, high level race car driver, would it really be the same? would you have become the same person without those trials and
Right.
tribulations and challenges?
No, I mean, and I get what you're saying. Like there's this, it's got to be a lifestyle. And at some point in time, you got to stop taking the drug. I mean, I've seen things about it basically stopping the stomach from digesting food at some point in time because and even that part of the mechanism is that it digests slower. So then some people have food that are days old in their stomach. I'm sure this is rare, but it's yeah, I mean, you want to earn your way. The joy is in the journey. But there's so many people that want a shortcut, and they really do. And if there was a magic pill to lose weight, like everyone would take it. Like that's why I think it's so popular right now. But it probably is more indicative of a personality and more indicative of that than it is, and more something on a psychological level and emotional level that could use some improvement.
Again, we don't communicate this well enough. What it is that people think like all the amazing value and benefits is just from being fit and looking good. They think that's where, like, for example, people will think, my God, if I just had a lot of money, everything would be awesome. Look at the data on people who win the lottery.
Oh my God.
A majority of them go bankrupt. A majority of them, they experience like a better life for a short period of time, then it goes back down to baseline.
Right. You've heard like Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yes.
Like no matter how much money you have, like you kind of gonna do one or the other. You can win the lottery and still lose it if you kind of have a poor dad mentality. And it's probably the same with fitness, like what you're just about to say. Like if you have a sort of, I'm just gonna categorize like fat, skinny sort of mentality, like it's probably has to do with your way of life.
It does, and fitness is a unassuming yet powerful vehicle for personal growth because you show up, it hurts, it's hard, you fail, you learn, you practice, you learn body acceptance. This is what people don't realize. You do this long enough, and you actually get to a point of body acceptance. Even though most people initially start exercising because of maybe some insecurities about their body, if you do it long enough, you really start to accept. Like this is my body. This is how I look. And
right. And that's interesting that you say that, because one thing I wanted to ask about, because so many of us are using social media and what we've seen as a, cultivated appearance by certain people that are promoting things to be like, I want to look like that. And what I was trying to remember, because like, you're totally right about getting to acceptance, because you realize you're working your ass off, you are, and you're like, wait a minute. I walk around, I don't see people that look like that. Like, that's just, I'm like, I tell people, I'm like, seriously, if you want to look like that, think about how many people you see looking like that in regular life. Almost nobody. Why? Because it's Photoshop. But then number two, they must be on drugs, which leads to how many basically PEDs of sorts, anabolic enhancers that there are out there. And how many people are you looking at that you want to look like that are totally unhealthy?
yeah, and Arthur Brooks is a good friend of mine. He's been on the show a couple times. He's a Harvard professor, expert on happiness, and so he knows the data very well. And he says that beauty contributes, so beauty being aesthetics, how you look, contributes very, very little to happiness. So he says, like, let's say you're on a scale of 1 to 10, you're a 6, and you spend all kinds of time, money, and effort to plastic surgery, whatever, to get yourself up to a 9. He goes, your happiness will go up a tiny, tiny fraction. It's not the case with fitness, because it's not, it makes you look good. It's the journey and the process of showing up. It's hard. It's acceptance. It's changing your relationship to pain. When you first exercise, it hurts. By the way, it still hurts 10 years later, but it feels different. Changes your relationship to pain. Boy, does that carry over to everyday life.
Yeah.
It's a learning process. It's a skill. It's so many different things. And if we had a magic pill that gave you all of the benefits, quote unquote, of, let's say, fitness, looking good, fat loss, all that stuff, but you didn't go, it's like taking a helicopter ride to the top of Mount Everest. Beautiful view. Looks nice. Wow, that's great. Is it the same thing as climbing the mountain? It's not even close. Like,
right.
You can't compare the two. We don't communicate this enough with people. So what happens is people start this journey of exercise and they just look at the scale and they say, oh my God, it's not moving down fast enough. This really sucks. And they totally ignore the fact that, oh, my libido is better. Oh, my mood is better. I showed up, every week now for the past 6 weeks, and my energy is
Mhm.
better. These are all things people tend to ignore because we're so focused on this, like, scale. And then, you mentioned, like, looking at people. This is a unfortunate it's good to be aware of it, though, but it's this unfortunate, aspect of human behavior, is our happiness tends to be connected to how we rank ourselves with our peers. If you are on social media and you're scrolling through and you follow all these accounts of all these perfect bodies, your brain perceives that as people that are around you. So now you're like, man, I am so far down the totem pole in terms of beauty that I am just, which it's not true. It is absolutely not. First of all, social media is people's personal advertising. It's totally,
Oh, yeah.
totally fake.
I put
Also,
the best photos out there too. Like I picked through, I'm like, nope, okay, that one,
what's fun? It's also fake. It's also fake from this standpoint. I've met a lot of these fitness and health perfect looking
I
people.
bet.
You don't want to be like a lot of them. A lot of them have severe body image issues, disordered eating. They don't have good relationships. They are dysfunctional and obsessive, body obsessed. And they'll tell it, they'll say that, like, I this is hard for me. I don't like this
Mm,
doing it. This is like hell. It's torture. They
mm.
don't go to, family events. They stress over every macro. Like, you don't want to
Oh
be like that.
man,
It's not worth it.
I
Uh,
bet.
no.
Uh,
So, I tell people to, and I've done this with myself, is I'll go through my algorithm and I'll purposely modify it and change it so that it only shows things, to me that, make me feel better. So, like, I get rid of the crazy news stuff and the extremist stuff, and
all the comparison is the thief of joy stuff.
yes, absolutely. It's totally true. My parents are poor immigrants. My dad, was very, very poor growing up. He went to school up to 2nd grade, just so people understand, like, he couldn't go to school anymore, couldn't afford it, had to work.
Wow.
So he's, what is he, 9 years old? He lived in like a cement house with, 6 siblings, and he likes to talk about how happy they were. He's like, "We didn't have anything, and we were
So
together."
fun.
Yeah, so, I know we're getting a little, on the esoteric side here, but it's important to communicate this.
I can go as far down the esoteric side as you want. Aliens, plant medicines, like I can go down whatever avenue you want to go down.
Oh,
So feel free. Feel
I see
free to
why
be as esoteric as you like.
I see why you like the show. We're the same people. It's, it's interesting, but we need to communicate this. When I became successful as a trainer, in the sense that I was able to really get people, good results that they were able to sustain. This is the part that I figured out, is I figured out how to communicate all of the benefits that the people were, experiencing through fitness.
Mm,
Just my body looks different. I'm strong.
mhm.
I lost weight, but it's like my energy's better, and I'm way more calm, and I noticed that traffic doesn't bother me as much, and I'm enjoying it for those reasons.
Yeah.
And then they were able to really see the total value and appreciate it, and over time, they were able to develop this kinda, I mean, many of them still to this day, I haven't trained anybody for 8 years, but they still are consistent on their own. These are all people that were never consistent, and it was because of that, versus the, like, this is all about making you look a particular way. This is all about, making you lose weight. I had one guy I trained where he had struggled with weight for most of his life. His goal was to lose 35 pounds. It took him 3 years training with me to lose 35 pounds. Now, it's not
Probably
because,
put on 20 pounds of muscle though.
well, no, it wasn't even, I mean, yes, he did put on muscle, but it wasn't because necessarily we did things wrong. It's because we took our time, we did
Mhm.
things right. I
Mhm.
he learned how to modify his behaviors. He learned how to focus on all of the other benefits. Now he lost that 35 pounds in a 6-month period at the end of that 3-year process.
That's hilarious. How'd that happen? You went
Well,
on
it
the
was just,
first cut, you were on a bulk the entire time for 2.5 years, and then you're finally like, okay, you can do a cut now.
yeah, no, it was more like, he had so many, bad associations with exercise and diet,
Mm,
and it was just this real negative thing for him, a lot of body image issues, and so we just focused on feeling better, body
yeah.
acceptance, he started enjoying the fact that for the mental benefits, and then he started to enjoy coming in just to see me and everybody else in there. He really liked it, and then it just clicked. By the way, this was how long ago now? 15 years ago? He hasn't gained a single pound back. I still talk to the guy.
Oh yeah, he changed his psychology.
Everything, right? Now before, you know how many times he lost 30 pounds and gained it back?
Right. Terrible. Yeah. Well, it's the rich dad, poor dad. Again, it's like the mentality is what's important. You can get money, but you'll lose it. You can lose weight, but you'll gain it because you don't really know how and why and have the infrastructure to make it better.
Yeah.
Because you're just in the same cycle.
You know how many people lose weight every year? Millions. 90% of them gain it back. We don't have a weight loss problem at all. Everybody's like, we have a weight loss, but it's not. We have a keep it off problem.
We have a Monsanto problem too, but you know,
that's a whole nother
problem. I went to Europe this summer for 6 weeks and drank almost every day and ate pretty much whatever, and
felt way different.
It's true.
Yeah, that's you bring up a good point. And I've said, we're now making a real hard push on the show, but there's a huge incentive for a lot of companies and governments to keep us unhealthy. There's a huge incentive. When you're unhealthy, you're dependent. When you're unhealthy, you can be manipulated very easily. When you're unhealthy, you use lots of pharmaceuticals. When you're unhealthy, your consumption habits are different. Healthy people don't consume in the same way that unhealthy people do. We're not the best. Healthy people are not the best consumers. We don't spend a lot of money on, pharmaceuticals. Like, go to the grocery store. What percentage of the products and foods in there are maybe loosely directed towards unhealthy habits?
Oh my God, probably 80%.
I mean, look at all products, all things that we consume. We just went through this pandemic, okay, where it was really scary. I mean, it was a concentrated effort to scare the shit out of everybody. I think that's pretty clear.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Looking back. And if you were sick, unhealthy, it was easier for you to be afraid. It was easy to be manipulated. Like, if you're healthy and fit and you take your health into your own hands, it's harder to manipulate people when they're fit, healthy, and confident. When you're not feeling confident, when you don't feel empowered, you're easy to manipulate. So there's this anti-health industry that is really geared towards all of that. I mean, again, think of all the products. Think of the products that decrease activity, that make things easier. Think of the products that mask symptoms. So headache, pain, acid reflux, heartburn, constipation, whatever. Like, so many products would go bankrupt if everybody all of a sudden became healthy.
And then companies and politicians and all those people would lose their funding. Governments.
By the way, it's getting pretty ridiculous now. I'm starting to read articles about how fitness and gyms are toxic and not inclusive, how they're alt-right. It was really strange things that I'm reading. I never thought I'd read.
That's
ridiculous. Oh, it's crazy. It's the most inclusive. The most inclusive place you'll ever go is a gym.
Dude, talk all you want about CrossFit. Nobody gets cheered for more than the last person in a workout. Yes. I'm watching it on the floor at the games, and they're all out there cheering for the person that is still not done yet. And these are the top 20 elite human beings in the world. Like, it is like, fitness is so inclusive. I mean, I go to them all the time, and you walk by and you smile at people and you look, and you're not elbowing your way through. You're not a dick to anybody. It's like, you're like, cool, you showed up. So did I.
The most inclusive gyms are the most hardcore, which is so funny. You go to the one with all the chalk and the crazy lifters and all that stuff. And if you're in there trying, like, they want to help you. They support you. It's so great. Nobody cares how you vote, who you sleep with. Nobody cares what your religion is.
They shut down beaches and trails during COVID, like, as if you were going to get something at the beach, like, or like hiking. Like, that is just like, it's just ludicrous. I do laugh at those images on social media of like, don't forget we did this. Like there are people like what they would wear and their mechanisms. And I mean, it's just like,
it was a lot of fear, and it was a lot of manipulation. And it was, I mean, I think it was a good potential learning lesson. I think a lot of people are still traumatized, unfortunately.
well, they're probably in areas that it was made that way, or do a job that had to ingrain it into them as a pattern and a really deeply rooted fear. You know, and I feel for those people who lived in areas where it was super prevalent as far as rules go, and also the people that had to, you know, be involved in jobs that, you know, would force them to, you know, stay in that state.
Yeah, you know, gyms were shut down the longest, and they did a couple studies on the transmission of COVID in gyms, and it was actually one of the safest places you could go. And people are like, "Well, how's that possible? People are working out next to each other." The last place people go when they don't feel good is a gym. So it's just there's a bit of a self-selection bias. Sick people
Mhm.
don't work out.
Mhm.
So that's why you didn't see this huge transmit. But I mean,
Ooh,
you forced people to stay at home in poor health. I mean, the side effects of all that cause more deaths than
yeah, for
the
sure.
actual virus itself. You know.
And I think everybody realizes that, even the ones that don't want to say it, it's like they can at least accept some level of like, okay, that was probably a little much, you know?
Yeah, and, the people in the fitness and health space were the most resistant. All of us were like, "Oh, wait, hold on a second. You know, you told us for years that margarine was better than butter. You told us for years that egg yolks are gonna kill me. You told me for years that, you know, whole I should eat mostly, you know, carbohydrates from breads
Stay
and"
away from saturated fat and steak.
Yes, like, you
Your
told
cholesterol number matters.
and so all of us were like, I'm a little yeah, I'm gonna be a little skeptical when you tell me that I can't go to the beach.
Take a
So,
hard pass.
yeah, no
I
thanks.
mean, do you see any end in sight? These are the kind of questions I get to, and I ask myself, I'm like, I'm literally like, am I just gonna have to move? I'm going to Europe this summer. I was like, I could live here. You
Yeah.
know, like, I mean, if health is so important to me, like, you can go to, you know, Whole Foods and go buy the best possible options. You can be even at your farmer's market, but you can't stop like what's being dumped into the air. You can't stop what kind of seeds you get. Like, there's just only so much you can do.
Yeah, you need to mitigate your the threats. The biggest offenders would be the, chemicals that or the things that we put on our skin. That's a big one. So, like, makeups, lotions, those things are pretty big offenders. The plastics that we store food and water in, that's a big offender. And then I would avoid glyphosates as much as possible. They have kind of an antibiotic effect on the microbiome, so that's kind of that's throwing people off. And then, you know, keep yourself fit. You know, when you are fit, your body's detox pathways are so much more effective. I mean, just sweating alone is a wonderful way to get the
Sure.
body to rid itself of you know toxic chemicals and stuff like that.
Lymphatic system keeps moving as you move and jump and move around. I mean,
Yeah, having good balanced hormones because you're fit helps offset the xenoestrogens that you know, unlike I mean, you're gonna be exposed to. And
mhm,
I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, if we really wanna go, like, you know, big picture here, if we changed our consumption habits because we were all moving towards being healthy, then the markets would shift, and we would see a lot of these
exactly.
we would see innovation because people are like, "Well, it's cheaper to eat this way or whatever." Only because that's where the market pushes it. You know, when the demand is high, markets are really good at finding cheap ways to deliver what we want. But if
Mhm.
we're all, you know, pushing in a healthy direction, then we would see the markets move and innovate in that direction. So they would find alternatives. This is what producers do.
Absolutely. If we don't participate, it doesn't exist, you know? If you think the newspaper's bullshit, stop buying it, and I promise you it'll be gone pretty quickly, because people
Yeah,
are not in the business of losing money.
100%. So you would see markets change. You would see innovation move towards products that were healthy.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
but we all have to kind of move in that direction. It takes a little bit of awareness.
yeah.
But you know, you asked like, when is this all going to change? I don't know. I think we're we're in uncharted territory with distractions of social media. They're getting really good at keeping us distracted and not present. It's only going to get more powerful. So I don't know. I don't know what that's going to look like. It almost feels like, it's funny. I was just talking to the guys the other day. We went to this event in Tennessee, and I saw a lot of Mennonites, I think they're called, right? So
Mm-hmm.
okay. And so I looked them up because you could tell who they are. They have a certain haircut, they dress a particular way. So I'm like, this is interesting. Like, what do they do? So I looked them up. Then I read about the Amish, and it sounds so like extreme. But then part of me is like, they kind of figured it out a little bit.
Right, right. They have like no cancer or something. They have no, like, there's certain like metrics in which exist in those communities that are exceptional and healthy. They grow their own food. They have low stress. There's no technology. There's probably really low EMFs and
Yeah, I was like, I wonder. So it might take some a little bit of radical changes. But okay, look, not to discourage anybody. Like step one, structure some exercise. Strength training would be your most effective form for a couple days a week. Move more throughout the day. Walking after meals is good. Taking the stairs is good.
yeah.
Parking far from your destination is good. That all adds up. People think that doesn't make a big difference. It makes a huge difference. Eat whole natural foods, and that's 90%. That's literally 90%. The whole natural foods one is a big one. That's a huge one. Most people would lose most of the weight that they want if all they did was eat whole natural foods and didn't even worry about cutting their calories or
Yeah.
trying to eat less. If they just did that, your consumption tends to get self-regulated in a much more, because your body doesn't want to be obese. There's this weird misconception that humans are like eating machines. You just put food in front of us, we'll eat it. That's not true. We have palate fatigue. Our body will tell us when to stop. But if you eat foods that are engineered to make you overeat, which is heavily processed foods, that's what they're designed to do, then you are going to overeat. If you avoid them, I would get clients to lose on average about 15 to 20 pounds just from that. I'd tell them, eat as much as you want, just eat whole natural foods, and they'd lose 15 to 20 pounds almost every time.
Well, I mean that, back to, I'd like to have you explain the sort of, process of it, but it was a huge epiphany for me just listening to the process of sort of metabolism and muscle and calorie consumption. And, for me at the beginning of the year, pretty much been on like almost a reverse diet all year, like building muscle, understanding that you literally can't build muscle without the calories to do it. So you get all these people that go work out and they, pushing their ass off, eating like the difference between 1,200 and 1,700 calories is like a whole giant meal. Like it is heaven, right? Like, but they're trying to eat that and working out really hard at the same time. And then you end up in this sort of calorie prison. And I think a lot of people get there. I really, and so understanding that mechanism just so you can have a healthy lifestyle, so you can eat the steak and the eggs and the potatoes and the fruits and not really worry, but people really do get in the hole. I believe it. They're in their 1,100 calorie hole.
Yeah. So Chris Kresser gave me a great example. He said, if I gave you 5 plain boiled potatoes and I told you to eat them all in 30 minutes, would you be able to? It was like, probably not. Like I would gag after the third one. Right. He says, if I gave you a family size bag of Lay's potato chips, would you be able to? And I said, well, yeah. And he goes, it's about the same amount of potatoes. It's just one of them has been engineered to be hyper palatable. Studies show consistently, these are the best studies we have on diet. Diet studies are hard because they tend to be observational. So it's like, what did you eat? How many tomatoes did you eat last week? So it's like surveys and stuff. They're notoriously inaccurate. But the studies they've done on processed foods is they actually have people go into a lab and they take 2 groups and they give them unlimited access to either heavily processed foods, so foods that you find in wrappers and boxes, versus whole natural foods, one single ingredient types foods like fruits, vegetables, meats, eggs, that kind of stuff. And they even control the macros. In other words, similar protein, fat, carb type, breakdown. And then they have them eat as much as they want, and then they switch them so that now this group goes in this room, this group goes in that room. And you're looking at about 600 calorie difference per day. 600 calorie difference per day of just eating until you're satisfied. It's just one type of food the science that goes into engineering heavily processed food is so crazy. Have you had a food scientist come on your show?
No,
It'll blow your mind. It
really.
oh, it's such a crazy science. Everything from the mouth feel, the texture, the lingering taste,
Mm,
the crunch, the residue it leaves on your fingers, of course, the taste. Like they have got it down to a science to where they can create these foods that are so hyper palatable that would never exist in nature. That when you eat them, when your body is satiated, when it's ready, it's like I've had enough. You've gone above and beyond where your body would normally.
yeah.
You've just overeaten, is what's happened. So when people just avoid those foods, they eat less without realizing. They eat until they're full, but they don't realize that they're actually eating less. And then, what you were saying about fueling the body. Yeah, you when you send the signal to build muscle, if you don't have the building blocks, it's not going to happen. So you have to have the proteins, you have to have some of the calories to do that, and then your metabolism speeds up. That's great. I would get a person's metabolism to boost by, on average, anywhere between 500 to 800 calories a day. Some people a lot more depending on how low they were. Like that's a big, 500 calories is like an hour and a half of cardio. Like what if you could just burn that on your own? That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
It's a really good strategy for most people to approach things.
So to not be afraid of the weight, right? Because, if you weigh 100 pounds, that's you also, when your weight goes down, you require less calories for the machine. So if you can be the same height, but weigh 135 instead of 100 and look great because it's muscle, then you just have way more flexibility with your life.
Yeah, I used to tell typically my female clients to take their scales and put it in the closet. Don't weigh yourself. We'll check in a few months, and
Hmm.
they were always shocked. They were always so shocked. I would get this comment. I used to love this. They'd come in and they'd say, "Man, people keep commenting on how much weight I've lost. Everybody's like, 'Oh my god, you lost so much weight. You look so good.'"
Like, all right, pull the
And
scale down.
then I'd have fun with them and I'd weigh them, and they'd weigh themselves and they would be the same. And they'd say, "Wait, I haven't lost any weight." I said, "Well, no, you lost body fat. You gained some muscle, but everybody's commenting on how much weight you've lost because you're smaller and you look different."
Yeah, totally.
So,
What
yeah, the
about
scale
running? You
oh,
mentioned running.
yeah. I mean, if you want stamina and endurance and you like that form of activity, it's great. Terrible way to lose weight though, because it teaches the body to become more efficient with calories. It actually slows down the metabolism if that's all you do, especially in combination with a low calorie diet. So what you're doing, remember, whatever you're doing with exercise, you're telling your body to get better at what you're doing. Okay, so let's look at running. Running requires stamina and endurance, doesn't require much strength at all. And while you're doing it, you burn a lot of calories, which is true. So the body is like, okay, we need to become better at this. We don't need much strength. We're burning a lot of calories. Let's become more efficient. So it loses muscle, is what it does. So when you look
Hmm.
at weight loss through running and calorie restriction, typically half of the weight or close to half the weight that's lost is muscle. So you end up with this slower metabolism. So it's like I lost 10 pounds, then I plateau, and then okay, I need to run more. I need to eat.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
right.
end up in this really crazy, unsustainable place where you're eating less and less and less, running more and more and more, and then
Yeah.
you're eating 1,200 calories a day. I'm running 5 days a week. Like this is not sustainable for me. If I go off for a week, I gain all this weight, which
So
is
what do you tell people like that? If so that's somebody's comes to you and they do that. They're running all the time, they have low calories. What's the next step?
so what I have them do is I slowly reduce the running and I start introducing strength training and I do what's called a reverse diet. You just mentioned that. So a reverse
Mhm.
diet is where we slowly increase their calories. I make sure their protein intake is high. That's really important. So
How
we
high can it get? Because I'm like, I weigh about 115 and I probably eat about 130 grams a day.
oh, you're fine. I mean,
Can you
the
eat even more than that?
yeah, I could. I mean, unless you experience like gastro issues or distress. But I tell people aim for about a gram of protein per pound
Yep.
of target body weight. It's just the upper limit of benefit from protein is right around there. Eating more isn't bad,
Okay.
especially if you like it and you enjoy it.
Okay.
But unless some people might notice digestive issues from that because they'll maybe not eating enough fiber as a result.
Got it.
Other than that, no, there's no problem. Protein's
Okay.
fine. I mean, we
Okay. So you get them working out, you get them lifting, you dwindle the running so it's not cold turkey on them, and then you reverse diet them up.
Yeah, and we see a metabolism boost.
How long does it take for them to be able to get to a point generally? What do you like the recommendation? Like, hey, I need you to be patient for 6 months, or I need you to be patient for a year or 3 months before they can get to the point where they're really only strength training for the most part and their calories are in a much more human range.
There's a huge variance with that. It depends how long they've been doing what they're doing, how much quote unquote damage has been caused.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a lot of accumulated stress on the body, if we see adrenal, like what is it? Not adrenal fatigue. That's the old term. People hate that because it's not really what's happening. But you see this kind of dysfunction between or dysregulation between the adrenals and the hypothalamus, and so you get this. It's a heal.
Cortisol spike, like that was me. Mine was all flipped.
Yeah, it could take a while for some
Mhm.
people. Some people, it's actually quite fast. But if I have, like, let's say I have a female client who's been beating the crap out of herself for years and years and years, she's eating 1,200 calories a day. It could take us, 6 months to a year
Yeah.
to get to that point. But by the way, that entire time she's improving, so it's not like nothing
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
She's seeing changes, and feeling good.
Yeah.
Other cases, it happens, much faster, but it can take a while sometimes, so people should need to be patient. I mean, if you've been chronically stressing your body, your CNS probably has a memory, on all of that, and so it kinda wants to hold on because, for 10 years, you've been beating the crap out of me and under eating.
Yeah.
So it can take a little while sometimes depending on the person.
How long do you see the body being able to tolerate abuse? Like if somebody's sitting there going, man, I've been doing this jam for a while. Like I work out super hard. I'm super calorie restrictive. How long can they get away with it usually?
Boy, that's a tough question. The body's ability to tolerate ridiculous accumulated amounts of stress and our ability to deny the fact that that's happening, it can be pretty wild. I mean, I've talked to people where the signs are so obvious, people losing hair, nails are brittle, like no sex drive, skin is just, they have skin issues, chronic gut issues. They've developed such a dysfunctional relationship with the process that they're scared to back off the exercise. It's like they're abusing it like a drug. So it's pretty remarkable. On the extreme end, I've seen some pretty crazy situations where it's like, okay, I'm going to work with you, but I'd also like you to work with a therapist, as breaking the chains that you have connecting you to this abuse is going to be really hard. Whatever you're running from, whatever you're distracting yourself from is going to surface as we stop, uh, you know, abusing this, whatever, this drug. We're turning it into a drug.
Totally.
So people they'll stop doing all that, and then they have to deal with some of their feelings or some of the other challenges.
You're really good at the psychological part. When you guys have your callers come on,
Yeah.
like you've got them pinned down. You're a good pattern recognizer. You can really understand where somebody's at very quickly, which I super appreciate.
Well, that's half the time is I'm talking to myself, because this is the struggle that I've dealt with my entire life.
Sure. It's
I
no
got
better example than yourself and having gotten through it to be able to identify it for sure.
Yeah, I got into this because of body image issues, and so that the other half of it is that we all trained a lot of people for a long time, and
Mhm.
you know I always speak highly of trainers and coaches because the other day I used baseball as an example. I said, baseball is a funny sport where if you hit, you're batting 300, right? You hit the ball 3 out of 10 times, you're doing great, right? In fitness, if you're a trainer and 30% of your clients get results that stick, like you're crushing. You are killing it. It's this weird job where you have to accept like tons of failure. It's hard. You don't make a lot of money. Like if you get into fitness because you want to make a lot of money, it's the wrong space. It's not an easy money making space. So the people that stick to it genuinely love and have a passion for helping people. And my co-hosts and I all had that in common. We just really wanted to help people, and you have to have a lot of tough conversations with yourself through that process. It's like, this isn't working, or why aren't my clients succeeding, or I keep running into this problem, or and I blew that woman out of the gym and she's not coming back. What did I do wrong? Like, what's going on? And then I worked a lot with other practitioners. At one point, I realized that there was a lot I could learn from therapists, acupuncturists, functional medicine practitioners, body work specialists like massage therapists, meditation specialists.
Wow.
So I'd work with them, and I would learn. I remember when I learned belly breathing from a meditation expert. So they
Mm.
taught me about how to teach someone how to belly breathe, and I
Mhm.
remember I was so excited because I had felt like what it did to me. And I took a client and we laid down on the ground. I had a small studio, and there was a room where I could kinda make it dark and relaxing, and I said, "Hey," you know, because I knew this person was, like, just chronically stressed. And I said, "Hey, we're gonna try some belly breathing." So I had her lay on the ground and, you know, she put one hand on her belly, one hand on her chest, and I said, you know, the way you teach it is, the hand that's on your belly should rise first and fully before
Mhm.
your chest, and let's do this. And we did this, and in 5 minutes in, she started crying. And I remember, first off, I was very unprepared for that. It's like, "Oh my god, what do I
Mhm.
do?" But then I realized how much we store in our bodies that we just keep, you know, locked up.
So
Um,
true.
and I learned that from the meditation specialist. I learned from, therapists with, body image issue clients. Like, I would get, you know, a kid who just came out of anorexia, and the therapist said, "Do not weigh them, don't focus on how they look, don't focus on body fat percentage." And I thought, "I'm gonna focus on performance, like how strong they are." And it was just so effective. Like, I could get somebody who's anorexic or who just came out of anorexia, focus on performance, and then they were doing the right things, because you have to do the right things to get stronger from that,
Right.
you know?
Mhm. You can't cheat that. You can't cheat getting stronger.
Yes. So, yeah, just man, I mean, we're there's a lot that we learned, through that process. I feel very blessed, to have worked with, you know, all these people. I had to go through that myself. I went through a period where I had, sat down with a couple practitioners in my wellness studio. I had my own health issues because I'd been ignoring my own body, and I sat down with them, just totally distraught, and I said, "Look, I can't figure this out, and I'm just gonna do what you tell me." And what I did through that process, I did gut testing and hormone testing, and, you know, started doing meditation, all that stuff, changed my workouts, is, couple things I had to do is I had to stop looking in the mirror, so that's weird. So it's like, you know, brush your teeth, comb your hair, get out. So I stopped looking in the mirror because that was triggering. I didn't weigh myself, and I consciously stopped paying attention to the weight that I was putting on the bar, which was pretty hard to do. And, the evolution that I got out of that was massive. It was so huge. I At the end of that year, I realized I looked better than I did when I was so focused on how I looked.
Mm.
And then it really dawned on me. It's like, "Man, if I'm just healthy, I'm gonna look good." Like, you know, it's like all
I
these
always
years.
wonder if there's some kind of thoughts become things little system happening where when you're doing the right stuff, you're getting stronger, whatever the things are that you're trying to do, you kind of envision that you'll look better from it, you'll be stronger, you just yeah, you're feeling yourself a little bit more. And instead, when you look in the if you're looking in the mirror, you just pick out the negatives and they get exacerbated and you almost I don't know, you keep yourself stuck from the thoughts that you're thinking.
In real life, health is the most attractive thing. The reason why I say in real life is because you can get away with poor health, looks good on, camera or pictures or video. But when you meet, it's funny, it's so funny. Early on when we started the show, we're trying to figure out how to, like, reach a larger audience, and you find these Instagram influencers with all these followers. You meet them in person and they look distorted. Like, "Oh, look, something doesn't look right." Or you go a bodybuilding show or something like that, and you see people backstage, you look at them in the face and you're like, "Oh, you don't look healthy at all. This doesn't look good." Um, in real life, good health is very attractive.
Mm.
So the stuff that we're aiming for really are just side effects of good health. They're not the main effects.
Mm.
So it's the health that you really wanna go after. You know, it's like, you ever talk to somebody And because and by the way, when I say health, I don't just mean physical. It's like, mental, emotional, spiritual. You ever meet someone who's emotionally, mentally, spiritually healthy? You talk with them for a few minutes and you're drawn to them. Like what a grounded, healthy person, right? That's what's attractive. We're all trying to be more attractive, I guess, or more accepted. It's like, just be healthy. That's really
well, I mean, from the mental, emotional standpoint, they're not projecting as much. They're not getting triggered. It's like a much more balanced conversation. They're less egotistical, because they have less insecurities. Yeah. I mean, the conversation is easy, pleasant, confident, but patient.
Yes.
Much different.
Yes, absolutely. Even as we live in a culture where we chastise age, like getting older is like this terrible thing. You meet someone who's healthy, who's 60, 70, like they're attractive. Like you sit down with them, you're like, man, this is I want to be around this person. So it's all about good health. What we've done is we've taken the symptoms or the side effects of good health, and we've distorted the shit out of them. Really have. It's like with all kinds of insanity. But you just got to be healthy. That's really what's the most attractive thing. Stop comparing yourself to other people.
Yeah.
You'll get there. You'll totally get there. It's within everybody's grasp. That's what I try to communicate the most,
The hard thing was like you sit down and you want to have this conversation and get all the like this, do that, do this, do that. And really what it ends up coming down to is this overall health of like consistency, self-respect, patience, moderation, adapting it to your life, your lifestyle, your body, how things react. I mean, even when it comes to food, like I've gone through every iteration of what you can possibly try. And finally hit me. I was like, oh, I already know. Like you already intuitively know what works for you because it agrees with you. Like I remember forever I didn't eat eggs because every time I took a blood test, it said you have high sensitivity. Eggs is off the charts. And I have ate eggs every single day this year. I didn't eat eggs for probably like, I don't know, 8 years or so, like almost never. And I was like, I never noticed a problem, but damn that test, And now I'm like, oh, okay. Well, it says don't eat cauliflower. It says I can eat cauliflower, but I tell you what, I put that thing, I eat that and it is no bueno. So it's like, you really freaking know, like you are well aware of it. It's just that we want clear and concise answers on everything, but it is a matter of being consistent, trying it out for yourself and having enough self-respect to stick with the program.
Self-care and self-love. If you work out because you're taking care of yourself, you're going to do it in an appropriate way. Cause that means sometimes that looks like a hard workout. Sometimes that means it's an easy workout. Sometimes that means you take the day off because you're actually trying to take care of yourself. Same thing with diet. If I'm trying to take care of myself in a genuine way, I'm probably going to eat what would be considered classically healthy most of the time. But sometimes taking care of myself is, sitting down with my friends and having pizza. So, that's where the balance and moderation comes from. But yeah, you're right. We've been taught to ignore our bodies. The Western medicine does this. How many times you go to the doctor, the doctor's like, you don't feel that. That's not what's happening. Or,
Right.
Yeah.
It's gaslighting.
Oh, it's insane. It's insane.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, look, I have so many more questions, but I think that's a really good sum of all the evils and all the good. And, I just super respect you for all the hard work you put in and generosity, and you give away the program to so many people, and you've built so many of them to adapt to so many different lifestyles, and you guys are honest and you tell the truth. And, I really, really appreciate that. And it's why I listen to you guys so often.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And, coming from you, the guys and I were fans of yours back in the day. So when I heard you listen to the show, we're like, what? Oh my God, that's so cool. So yeah, I appreciate the kind words. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Thanks everybody for listening to the Pretty Intense podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you heard today and you want to hear more, please click on the subscribe button.